Hi guys, just gonna do a quick filing demo. We've got this little collection of needle files and my favorite tool, which is a nice big half round. So this is a number, it's a cut 0, which is pretty darn coarse. It's great for student grade stuff, but I am a personal fan of the number 2, which I think is a lot easier in terms of finishing. So, just to go over, a file only cuts in one direction. So all of these little teeth only cut in the pushing motion. So the only time you should be applying downward pressure, like if I were to try to file my finger, which don't do that, but or my metal, I would only be applying pressure down onto the metal when I'm pushing forward. When I am pulling my file back, I would lift, or at least pull back that pressure. I mean, you don't need to, very exaggerated, but really you want to apply pressure, not apply pressure. Pressure, release. Because what'll happen is you'll compress the teeth and you will damage your file. So, that being said, you can see, you can hear. Let's see if I can show you guys all the warbling that's happening. You can really see it on this side, but usually you can see how it's just kind of ridgy and riddled with marks. And that's something that I'd like to get rid of up to about here. And then everything else I'm happy with as far as like hair texture. So I'm gonna make a little note because I don't want to file past that. So you can use your ring clamp. Some may choose to use it. I generally find, unless it's a really small piece, I do like to hold it with my hands. But this might help, just because there's so much openness. So I'm supporting my ring clamp and my bench pin. A little bit more snug. Feel free to readjust as you need. And really give it a good thump. That's better. So, as I'm filing, I'm really using that downward pressure and lifting up as I pull up. So you can see already how much more straight that line is becoming. And you can see my file's kind of starting to get a little clogged up with the copper bits. That's totally fine. So I put this piece of tape as a guide. So I'm gonna check back on that and make sure I'm not filing too much or not filing enough. I'm really being mindful of keeping my file really nice and straight. I'm not curving it one way or another, because then the quality of this filing is going to change. So the further away from the ring clamp I go, the more it wants to warble and move around. So I'm gonna get it a little bit closer. This might not be quite enough material for me to grab like this, but I'll try. Yeah. Nice. So, as I'm applying downward pressure, I'm also lifting my file up in kind of a airplane taking off motion, right? Again, I'm not going down because I don't want to curve this line. And I think you can see from the reflection how clean it's getting, nice and straight. So in order to preserve that quality, I'm really being mindful of the follow through of my filing. It's like bowling. And again, I'm cutting only in the pushing direction. A lot of people think it's pulling. If you are sitting there for hours filing your piece and feeling like it's not going anywhere, it might be because you are applying pressure in the wrong direction. Ring clamps, by the way, just like a clothespin. Jam it in there. And then when you release it, you just want to twist it out and it should pop right out. So I'm feeling pretty good about that line. I think it's pretty straight. So the half round is a great tool in order to hog out like the big, large pieces. So as large as I can go with a file is what I want, because the smaller the tool, the smaller the cuts. And if you've got large swaths of space, you're going to get kind of little nibble marks all over. So I'm particularly just a fan of the half round shape. And I've got a lot of kind of small but wide curves. Now I don't expect you guys to file all the surfaces, because the saw marks are totally fine. But if you've got parts that just look really funny, or you didn't cut enough, then I do want you to use your file and get in there. And then another way of cleaning up is actually using your saw frame. In this case, there is a little bit of my nose that I want to kind of cut out a little bit more of. I'm actually going to mark it a little better. And I could go in there with a file, or I could go in there with a saw. So you can file up to that line, or you can just saw it out. In addition to other spots that, might be too big for your file to reach. These kind of delicate lines, maybe in the eyes. So I'm gonna go back in and I'm really just gonna kind of scrape the side of my saw blade up against to just really remove like the little sliver. I'm not really removing a lot, just enough to clean it up. Now I'm still being really mindful of where my fingers are. Make sure it's behind the wood because you don't want to slip while doing this. You're not applying a bunch of pressure. I'm actually applying a lot more pressure into the metal rather than forward because I'm trying to basically shave some of that material off. So if I were to slip and hit my finger, I'm not going to do a ton of damage, but it's still not awesome. You can still very much cut yourself. So I'm looking at my nostril and I want to cut a little bit more detail out. So I'm going to go back in there and just really kind of rub my saw blade up on the side that I want to just shave off a tiny little bit. And in this case, I really can't get a file in there. I'm finding this annoying because I can't. Sometimes you just can't like catch it. So try going backwards. You can see the back of the nose, like the nostrils on either side are just a smidge bit wider. So yeah, it's kind of the basics of filing. You really just want to match your file shape to the shape that you're filing. So we've got, you know, so like if I wanted to file in there, I'm using the half round. You can also use maybe a barrette file. Because it doesn't have teeth on the other side, it's smooth. So it won't like rub up against the other side, and it won't file the other side if you don't want it to. Now again, I'm still being pretty mindful of trying to not, you know, really curve my wrist. As I'm filing. All these like little curves, but honestly it's pretty clean. Maybe like down there it's a little warbly. I really see it there, so I'm really gonna try and clean it up. And don't just file, make sure you stop and check frequently. You can hear the change in the sound, and it's when the file is cutting versus when it's not. Better. Now these files do want to create a bit of a burr on the back, so like when you start sanding the faces of your metal, that's when you'll really be removing all of that stuff. that's basically it. Oh, and the last thing is just like air guitar, air filing may look cool, but you're not actually doing anything. So when you're filing, like, I don't want you guys like filing wherever and just kind of moving your hands around. Really anchor your piece. Always want to anchor it to your bench pin, because then you can't really apply the right amount of pressure and the precision goes out the window. So that's basically it. Oh, and when you're holding the file, these guys are the handles, and the tang is about that long. You don't need a handle, but it is so much nicer because you can really start to make the palm of your hand hurt. These are really nice because they do have a handle. Some of your needle files won't, but when you're holding on to it, you really shouldn't be pushing it into the palm of your hand anyways. You should be holding it kind of back here where there are no teeth, and it's really not going to touch any part of that part of your hand. So, all right, get to filing. Thanks, guys.